In the early 2000s, two exercise physiologists at Shinshu University in Japan tried something simple. They asked a group of older adults to walk briskly for 30 minutes straight. No breaks, just steady effort, the way most fitness guidance still recommends today. Almost nobody finished the program. It was too hard to sustain and too boring to stick with. So Hiroshi Noze and Shizue Masuki changed one variable. Instead of one long push, they had people alternate 3 minutes of fast walking with 3 minutes of slow walking back and forth for the same 30 minutes. That single change is now one of the most rigorously studied walking protocols in the world, and it does something for circulation that steady walking simply doesn't. The published results out of a 5-month randomized trial with 246 participants averaging age 63 found the interval group gain meaningfully more thigh strength, more aerobic capacity, and a real drop in blood pressure compared to people doing the exact same total walking time at one steady pace. Same clock, same shoes, same sidewalk, different result because of how the muscle underneath was being used. Therefore, start with the muscle actually responsible for getting blood back up out of your legs, because the heart doesn't do that work alone. The calf carries real responsibility too. Every time the calf muscle contracts, it squeezes the deep veins running through it, forcing blood upward against gravity, while one-way valves stop it from sliding back down between contractions. Physiologists call it the second heart for a reason. Sit still for hours and that pump goes idle. Blood pools, ankles swell, and legs feel heavy by evening. Walk in a way that actually taxes that muscle, and the pump runs at full strength instead of a lazy shuffle. That's the part steady, comfortable walking quietly fails to deliver. A gentle stroll barely raises the intensity of calf contraction above what standing still already does. The fast bursts in interval walking training force the calf to contract harder and more completely, squeezing more blood volume upward per stride, while the slow intervals let it recover just enough to do it again. It's not more time spent moving. It's a stronger pump doing more actual pumping in the same amount of time. There's a knee and joint benefit riding along with the circulation gains that almost nobody mentions when they talk about this protocol. The same trials measuring blood pressure also measure leg strength directly and found interval walking training increased knee extension force by roughly 13% and knee flexion force by around 17% after 5 months, well beyond what steady walking produced in the same time frame. Stronger thigh and knee muscles do more than support the joint during a walk. They stabilize the leg well enough to keep the calf pump firing efficiently with every stride instead of compensating with an uneven joint stressing gait, which means the same protocol quietly protecting circulation is also quietly protecting the knees from the kind of compensatory wear that shows up as pain a decade later. Blood pressure drops for a related reason. Trials on this protocol have recorded systolic pressure falling by roughly 9 points and diastolic by about 5 after several months of consistent practice, changes large enough to matter clinically, not just on paper. A functioning calf pump reduces how hard the heart has to work to keep blood moving through the lower body, and less resistance in the system tends to show up as a lower number on the cuff. Circulation in the legs and blood pressure in the whole body were never two separate conversations. They're the same plumbing, measured from different ends of the pipe, but the calf pump only works if it gets used regularly, and Japan builds in ways to activate it that have nothing to do with formal exercise. Eschuu, public and household foot baths filled with hot mineral water dilate the blood vessels in the lower leg through heat alone, and many traditional bathhouses pair that heat with a cold rinse afterward, a contrast that makes vessels alternately widen and narrow in a rhythm researchers have found measurably boosts blood flow compared to heat alone. 10 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold, repeated 2 or 3 times, mimics in miniature what the calf pump does with every stride, expansion followed by contraction, just triggered through temperature instead of muscle fiber. Here's a habit. Most Western households never develop that work on the exact same system passively. Elevating the legs above heart level for even 15 minutes lets gravity do what the calf muscle does while walking, draining pool blood back toward the torso without a single contraction required. It costs nothing but a wall and a floor cushion, and it's a staple of how many Japanese households wind down in the evening, legs propped against a low table or a wall after a long day on their feet. Left unaddressed for years, that same daily pulsing is exactly the mechanical pressure that stretches vein walls into visible varicose veins. So an evening habit that looks like relaxation is quietly functioning as prevention for a condition almost nobody worries about until it's already visible. Sitting culture cuts both ways here and is worth being honest about the trade-off. Traditional seiza, kneeling with the legs folded beneath the body, actually compresses circulation behind the knee if held for long stretches, which is why even in Japan it's increasingly paired with regular standing breaks rather than treated as a static endurance test. The lesson has nothing to do with floor sitting being inherently bad. The real lesson is that no position, traditional or modern, protects circulation if the body stays locked in it for hours without moving. Diet has its own quiet lever on this system too, running through cholesterol rather than the calf. Veins don't develop plaque the way arteries do, but the small vessels feeding the vein walls themselves can still be compromised by poor lipid profiles over decades, and a diet built around fish, soluble fiber, and fermented foods already tied to lower cholesterol elsewhere in Japanese longevity research is quietly keeping those support vessels healthier for longer. A circulation problem in the legs and a cholesterol number on a lab report aren't unrelated line items. They're upstream and downstream of the same vascular system. Blood sugar plays a role that's easy to miss because the symptoms show up in completely different places. Chronically elevated glucose damages small blood vessels throughout the body through a process called glycation, where excess sugar molecules bind to proteins in vessel walls and stiffen tissue that's supposed to stay flexible, including the vein walls and valves responsible for keeping blood moving upward against gravity. Weaken, stiffen, vein wall stretch more easily under pressure, valves stop closing completely, and blood starts pooling instead of moving efficiently upward, which is part of why poor circulation and blood sugar problems show up together in the same population far more often than chance alone would explain. Brain fog has a surprising connection to this same system and is backed by more than a hunch. Researchers following interval walking training participants found the protocol suppressed pro-inflammatory gene expression as fitness improved, and chronic low-grade inflammation is the same mechanism increasingly linked to the kind of mental sluggishness people write off as normal aging. A circulation fix aimed at tired, heavy legs is quietly running the exact same anti-inflammatory pathway already tied to sharper thinking elsewhere in this niche, which means the walk helping your ankles by evening may also be helping your focus by mid-afternoon. Inflammation from the gut adds a slower moving pressure on top of all this. A microbiome under chronic stress from a poor diet keeps circulating inflammatory markers that researchers have linked to vein wall weakening over time, meaning the fermented foods and fiber already covered elsewhere in this niche aren't just working on digestion. They're quietly protecting the structural integrity of the vessel walls themselves. Cortisol shows up here in a way most circulation content skips entirely. Chronic stress keeps blood vessels in a state of low-grade constriction as part of the body's fight or flight wiring, and constricted vessels move blood less efficiently even when the muscle pump around them is working normally. The same stress-lowering habits tied to belly fat and disrupted sleep everywhere else in this niche are quietly keeping the vessel themselves more relaxed and more willing to move blood freely. Sleep closes one more loop that's easy to overlook. Venous return actually improves during sleep simply because the legs are horizontal for hours, letting the calf pump's daytime work get reinforced by gravity instead of fighting it. But fragmented sleep that involves a lot of tossing with legs bent or crossed can undercut some of that natural nighttime drainage. A consistent, restful sleep position is doing more for the legs than almost anyone realizes while they're unconscious for it. So none of this is one trick. An interval walking protocol with real trial data behind the exact numbers, not a vague sense that walking is generally good. A calf pump used hard enough several times a week to actually count as a workout for it instead of a gentle stroll it barely notices. Hot and cold water alternating at the ankles, legs elevated above the heart most evenings. A cholesterol and blood sugar number kept in range through the same diet covered in every other video on this channel. Knee and thigh strength building in the background as a side effect nobody asked for. Stacked together consistently, it is the closest thing to a real fix for legs that ache and swell by evening. Not a permanent cure sold in 15 minutes, but a mechanical system finally getting used the way it was built to be used. Here's the part that should actually bother you. Heavy, swollen legs by evening get written off as normal aging or normal tiredness so often that hardly anyone investigates the actual plumbing behind it. The calf pump doesn't fail because of age alone. It fails because it stopped getting work hard enough to matter. One comfortable, low-effort walk at a time for years until the muscle underneath quietly forgets how to do its second job. Which raises the only question worth sitting with once this video ends. Not whether compression socks are worth buying, whether the walk you're already doing is actually taxing the muscle responsible for getting blood out of your legs, or just moving your body through space without ever asking that muscle to work harder than it was standing at the kitchen counter. 3 minutes fast, 3 minutes slow for 30 minutes, backed by 2 decades of published trials, costs nothing but attention to pace. What's stopping you from testing it on your very next walk? If research-backed habits like this, the ones with real trial numbers instead of vague promises, are useful to you, there's a whole list of them waiting in the next video, starting with the blood sugar number quietly working against every other habit cover here.